Welcome to Veterans Corner. I'm your host, Jay Stoyan. Now, I'm not a vet, but I'm stepping in until we get a permanent host, and we are dying for a veteran to take over the show. But until we do, we're going to be showcasing our heroes 24/7, 7 days a week. And on today's show, we're really excited. We have a wonderful female veteran, musician, wonderful lady. Jill Younghusband is going to be on the show. I love her last name. We talked about that off camera. So we'll talk about that more on camera. Stay tuned. You're watching Veterans Corner. We're going to be right back with veteran and musician Jill Younghusband. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Veterans Corner. Just to let everybody know, we are live now on Facebook. We have a wonderful guest. Before we get started, we might be having another veteran popping in from the East Coast, Fraser Newcomb. Now, I know he was trying to get in. Technology is wild these days. So all of a sudden, you might see two or you might see three people on the screen. Two of them are veterans. But until Fraser is able to pop in, if he is, we're going to do a wonderful, positive interview with veteran and musician Jill Younghusband. Jill, thanks for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me, Jay. Good morning.
This is great. So tell our viewers where you're calling in from.
I am coming to you from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada.
Nice. And how's the weather out there in Edmonton today?
It's a little cool today, around 22, a little overcast, but we've had a beautiful week.
Yeah. Has the summer been good out in Edmonton?
Oh, it's been wonderful.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And before we get started, I just want to give our prayers to the people with the fires out there, Jasper and all that. Can you give us any update? I mean, just because you're in Alberta and we're here in Toronto, just if you have any news. I think they were let back in, were they not? Maybe?
Yes, residents were able to return back to their homes in Jasper. Sadly, 800 residences were lost.
800, eh?
800. Yeah.
Wow. I know. I see the videos like on the TV. Just horrible. So prayers go out to all people at Jasper, and hopefully the community can rally around them, right? So.
Oh, I tell you, we've got a great community out here in Alberta. People rallied around the evacuees, even here in Edmonton. It was wonderful. The response is always good when there's a need here in Alberta.
That's great. Well, we have a special add-on today. So we do have our class today, so our enrollment class in our veterans program. So right now we have a studio down there in Toronto. They're watching us downtown Toronto. I believe we have 15 or 16 students taking our course, all to be professionals in media, either in front of the camera or behind. And we told them today we have a wonderful veteran coming on. So we have they're going to ask some questions later on the show that I'll just reiterate, or they can, if you can hear them. But I know there's a couple there that are musicians themselves. So they're very interested to see how you blend the two, veteran life and music life. So let's get started. Maybe you can tell our viewers what title you finished with when you're in the service. Did you do Army, Navy, Marine? You know what I mean? So tell our viewers, well, not Marines, because I know that's the United States. But yeah, so tell our viewers what title you finished with, and then we can go through your career.
Well, I enrolled as a non-commissioned support in service support in the Army. I was a trucker to start with. I was 17 years old, and I worked with the Army Reserve in Ottawa. And I did training at Canadian Forces Base Petawawa, also in Kingston. I did some training, Canadian Forces Base Borden, where a lot of the logistics training school is. And so we did a lot. We had a lot of fun in the reserves. We went
So when you say you're a trucker, tell us, what do you mean you're a trucker? Tell us what that means.
Well, I was a driver. I was a trained professional driver in the reserves. I drove the old deuce and a halves. We would do troop lifts in the training area. We would support exercises with the combat arms with the Army, and we would deliver supplies. We would deliver troops.
And what size of what kind of truck would you be driving? Like, would it be a military truck or an 18-wheeler?
Oh yeah, the old Army trucks like you see in the movies with all with the men in the back. With the
really?
Oh yeah.
And you were 17 then, or whatever, or 18, 17.
I was. Yeah.
Wow. So tell us a little bit. Now I know you're 22, right? So I just want to. So tell us, when you're entering the service, how was it for you? Like, how did your family feel? Do you have any brothers or sisters, your friends? Were they supportive? Were they going, what are you doing, Jill? Like,
I'm an Army brat. My dad was military.
Okay.
And my sister had joined the year before, and she's a year older than me, so she had joined the reserves. Because my father, being military, he said, "Well, why not join the reserves as a part-time job? And it's full-time for the summer, but you can work part-time through your last high school year. So you can join at 17 with parental consent." And
Wow.
that's what my sister and I and my brother did. And so my brother
Three?
was in there, yeah, three of us, three out of four kids joined the military. My eldest brother went into sales. So yeah, military.
Wow.
It was a very familiar environment to
So
work
your
in.
dad had a huge influence on your life, obviously.
Absolutely. Hmm.
And can we talk a little bit about your dad's service? What was his role? What was he doing in the military?
My dad joined the military at 16 in the
Wow.
60s, and he joined the Royal Canadian Army Service Corps as a trucker. Hmm, imagine.
Wow,
And
really?
he was airborne. He was at Rivers, Manitoba, and he was what my mother he was known as 120 pounds of romping, stomping, screaming airborne hell. So
Really?
he was very young, and he was the skinniest guy in his unit, and he would be the first one out of the plane and the last one to hit the ground.
That's so funny.
My mother would say, "Oh, there's Gary."
That's such a funny story. Like that's a
Yeah, she would
great
go and
story.
watch them in the drop zone, and you see all these little parachutes, bloop, 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 jumping out of the box cars, the old aircraft that they were using at
Wow.
the time.
So
And
four
yeah,
you had four family members in service.
yes.
That's crazy. Like that's great. Like that's unbelievable
Mhm.
because you know, growing up in I didn't know anybody in the service. I didn't have one connection with a veteran growing up. Like not one, not my grandfather. They always missed the ages. So
Sure.
my grandparents were never involved in any war. My
Hmm.
dad, my own, nobody joined the military in my family that I'm aware of. So it's totally new. But I think like I always had a lot of respect for people in the military because I always attached them to being tough. I just attach them. If you're in the military, you're tough. Like
Well,
you're
it
one
can
tough
be
son
a
of a gun.
challenging job. It's a very difficult job and physically demanding and
I can
mentally, well,
imagine.
demanding on all levels, truly.
And do you think, looking back, this was a wise decision that you made going into the military, Jill?
At the time it was.
Yeah.
At the time it was. Yes, I learned so much, and I I know that and depending on your trade, I was a trucker to start with, and I was 17 years old, and I developed people skills because we moved around so much. I went to 12 different schools growing up, and
Yeah.
I was a bit of a loner. And and then when I joined the military and I became well, even basic training, I became part of a section, and then part of a unit, part of a team. And everybody was in the same boat. We're all miserable, wet, and tired in the field, in a trench, doing our basic training. So you end up developing really close friendships, and the camaraderie it is just it's
So
hard to define.
when you entered, were you the only female? Or there's a couple other females in your sector or
Yeah, there were around 10% were female, and we had
okay.
I think yeah we had 50 people. We had a like a platoon, and yeah, there were 5 or 6 women. Yeah.
Really? Wow, that's
I'm
exciting. Like I
trying to
find that
remember now how many women we had. Yeah, but I chummed with one. I managed to make close friends with one recruit. Her name was Sue, and
that's
we lost track over time. But you tend to make friends on different courses, and yeah.
I find it fascinating coming from a female's perspective, just because it's a female. Because most of the times,
Mhm.
military, you associate with guys, which I know you shouldn't
Yeah,
do, but you know what I mean. So I find it really fascinating from getting your perspective. So how long again did you spend in the military? Tell our
I spent
viewers.
17 years total. I spent 5 years in the reserves,
Okay.
and 4 of those years were full-time contracts in Ottawa. And then because I changed my trade from transport from trucker to administrative clerk. So I became an administrator, and then I was able to find different contracts within the Ottawa region at the headquarters in Ottawa and some of the reserve units. Like I worked at Changing of the Guard, I worked with the Cameron Highlanders of Ottawa, and I also worked with 28 Ottawa Service Battalion, which is now 33 Service Battalion. And I also worked at the headquarters at National Defense for
Wow.
a short time. And then I transferred into the regular force. Once I had met certain prerequisites of training within the reserves, you can bypass the main basic training out of Cornwallis at that time. Now it's in Montreal.
I'm
So
just
I was
promoting as we speak. So that's why I just let
oh
you know. I'm
yeah.
just promoting.
So
Yeah.
I was a direct entry regular force administrative clerk. And so I started working in career management. And I did that for 5 years. And boy, did I learn a lot. Yes.
Wow.
And
So
it was
quite the
a lot of work. And during that time with I managed a 6-month tour. I managed to get a 6-month tour in Namibia, Africa with the United Nations. So that was my one of my foreign tours, but like a deployment.
wow.
And then from working in career management, I was privileged to have the opportunity to live in Germany and work with the NATO AWACS, which is a flying air traffic control station. It's a Boeing 707 with the frisbee on the top,
Wow.
and we monitored the no-fly zone over Bosnia.
Okay,
So
hold that thought. Hold that thought. My producer's saying we're going to take a commercial break, but this
sure,
is fascinating. Like, you got a great career. You work
I
with
really,
the UN, NATO. Wow,
mhm.
this is great. On the show today, we have veteran Jill Younghusband. She tells us all about her career, and after we're going to get into how she's a musician and talk about how music has also helped her life, career, just in general. Music makes the world go round. So stay tuned. You're watching Veterans Corner. We'll be right back.
Hi, this is Rocky Blyer, and you're watching the Disability Channel showcasing abilities.
Welcome back to Veterans Corner. On the show today, veteran and musician Jill Younghusband. She's telling us about her career, her extensive career in the military. So you're a little bit like a MacGyver.
Pardon me?
You're a little bit like a MacGyver.
How
Like you
so?
kind of, well, you've done it all. You've worked all your for the
Well, you know,
UN and then NATO and
it's funny you mentioned MacGyver. When I was on my junior leadership course, they gave us these taskings. Like for me, one tasking for myself. It's a leadership course. You need to change the tire on that 1-ton truck without a jack. And we always said, well, when I saw MacGyver once.
really?
Yes. So yeah,
No,
that's what I'm thinking. Yeah, it's funny you
so
mentioned
as
that.
long as you have like a little piece of gum and some elastic band, oh, I can fix it.
Yeah,
This is
and we basically, we needed 8 people and a tree stump and a board, and just to lift it up, and we did it. We did it. Yeah.
so tell me. So again, you served 17 years in the military. I'm just promoting as we're speaking. So you served
Yeah.
17 years in the military, and when did you get out?
I got out in 2000. here in
And
Edmonton.
okay,
Yes.
so you've been out for almost 25 years.
Yes, I can't believe it.
Now, I know we were talking offline that you're on disability leave through the military. And without getting too personal, can you tell us what you want to tell us about that sort of scenario? How that
Sure.
not how it happened, but you know what I mean? Just
I'm
sort of
happy to share.
share with what. Yeah. Okay.
So when I was finished in when I got posted back to Canada in 1997 from Germany, I started developing some musculoskeletal issues, and so what the Canadian Forces has is a standard called universality of service. And so you are every year you have to meet the physical requirements of a soldier to to keep your position in the military. You have to be able to do a fireman carry a stretcher. You got to do a ruck march for 13 kilometers with a 70-pound pack, and you have to meet the physical fitness standards. I think there's a run and there's a number of push-ups, sit-ups, etc. I couldn't do that because of my spinal condition, because of my pain. And
Okay.
so with that, they offered me a medical release and a medical pension. And then at that time, they came in with a brand new program called with a vocational rehabilitation through our life insurance plan within the military. And so and it was just implemented when I released. So
Mm.
it was a blessing, because I ended up taking the Grant McEwen um, music program here in Edmonton, which is one of a kind program for singers. For
Ah.
the jazz, I was accepted into the jazz performance program without any musical training whatsoever, because I just love to sing and I play guitar. I know three chords.
Yeah, I'm
I'm
a
a
three-chord guy. I'm a three-chord guy.
yeah, three
Yeah,
chords
yeah.
and the truth, Jay.
Yeah, yeah, that's okay. Let's, you know what, let's, so now we're gonna, for our viewers, now we're gonna shift things. Now we were
Sure.
all serious for a little bit, talking service and serving
Mhm.
your country, and but now we're gonna go to music. So let's talk a little, let's shift it now. So you were saying off the air that you were sort of born with music in your blood. So tell us a little bit of history and take us through the veteran world with music.
Sure. Well, I've always been a singer. I've been singing all my life. And as a kid, my dad used to play ukulele with the family, and he taught me how to play. And one for my birthday when I was 8 years old, I got a ukulele. So
Wow.
I started playing by ear, and I got a little instruction book, and you look at the diagram, you put your finger where the black dots are on the, so you
Yeah.
just sort of figure it out. And I've got an ear, so I can hear the chord changes and the chord qualities. And so eventually I got a guitar when I was in my teens, and I just started playing with friends, and I just played at like we'd have a house party or a kitchen party. And so and a lot of soldiers in the military, they play guitar out in the field. You see, there's usually one or two. And so yeah, I used to just sing as a hobby. And when I was over in Germany, I teamed up with two other Canadians, one military and one was a military spouse, and we had a Canadian trio, and we would perform as volunteers at different Canadian events in Germany.
Really?
People would always say, "Jill, what are you doing in the military? Why aren't you a professional singer?" And I said, "Well, I don't have any idea how I could do that. I just like to sing."
Wow.
And
They,
so,
did you
so
do
when I,
cover? It was all covers, right? You were doing covers back then, I
oh
guess.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes, and we did a lot of Canadiana covers in Europe. We did Anne Murray, the Rankin Family, Rita McNeil, Gordon Lightfoot. Yeah, we had a wonderful time with some of the songs that we shared with the international community overseas. So I said to myself, when I go back to Canada, I'm going to see about taking some voice lessons and music lessons. And so I got posted to the infantry. I wasn't well enough to do all of the physical things that was required, and so I had to get medical support. And then after 3 years, I was medically released, and I went to Grant McEwen. I auditioned, and they accepted me. I didn't think I would get, like, I was so insecure about my musical background because I had no official training,
Yeah.
and I even had stage fright with some of the instructors. Like I had horrible stage fright. but I found a tutor to hire to teach me music theory, so at least I could pass the audition process to get into the program. Because there's a theory placement test, and I had no theory background whatsoever, and that's like another language. And
Really?
so I was accepted into the 2-year vocal performance program at Grant MacEwan, and it was a boot camp. I don't. It was hard work. It was hard work mentally just to learn the theory, how to analyze a chart, how to analyze a song, developing an ear, different chord progressions, the modes of jazz. Um,
Why don't we do this? Why don't we open it up to our class,
sure.
right? Because I know they have some questions, and it's gonna mostly more music questions and veteran questions,
Yeah.
which is fine.
All
So
right.
okay, so from our first class member, I'm gonna say what oh, this is a good one. What was the hardest chord it took you to learn? So what chord is the hardest for you?
Chord.
Yeah, like like lyrics in chord. Like what chord? What chord? Like three chord. What chord is the hardest to play for you?
I don't think there's any chords that are hard. You just have to like. Well, if you are singing in a 4-part harmony, usually
Yeah.
the alto line is a challenge because you have to have a really good ear for intervals. I can sing a lead no problem. I love to harmonize. However, when you get into the 4 or 5-part like uh, especially in classical music, for example, I went to hear a group called the King's Singers, and they started off as choir boys, and some of the chords that these fellas hit, like diminished fifth, I can't even imagine. My brain, I
Okay,
think.
so here's another one. It says,
But
dear.
yeah,
So during your time at the People's Party, how did you support the veteran community across Canada? Now, was that for you, or maybe that's for Fraser?
I'm not sure.
Okay, so we'll move on. Next question. Okay, I don't know why that I'm just reading questions are coming up on my
Yeah,
feed here. Okay, so the next question is, what Canadian musician inspired you the most?
John McDermott.
John
No
McDermott.
question. No
So
question.
so tell our viewers, because I bet you a lot of people don't know who John McDermott is.
Well, he's a Canadian tenor.
Okay.
Uh, he has his I think his father was Scottish, his mother was Irish or someone, and I've
Okay.
seen him many times. But he came out with an album uh, 30 years ago, I think, and it was an album of traditional songs and songs of meaning. And he recorded a song called "The Green Fields of France," and it's written by Eric Bogle, and it's a folk song, and it tells a story about someone visiting a Commonwealth War cemetery in Europe. How do you do, young William McBride? Do you mind if I sit here down by your graveside? And and so this whole he's done a lot of commemorative music to pay tribute to the soldier and to the veteran, and he has supported veterans his entire musical career. And so he inspired me. He inspired me to do what I do with my music, and that's to perform at commemorative events to honor the soldier.
I
And
heard it.
that's how I managed to connect with the Royal Canadian Artillery Band and also the Central Band of the Canadian Forces, where I performed at many commemorative events, including Rexall Place back in 2002 for the memorial service for the first 4 soldiers we lost in Afghanistan.
This is, I mean, that's not great, but this, what you're sharing right now is awesome, Joe. Like, I really appreciate this. And we have a lot of veterans watching, a lot of people watching. I got a couple more questions for you. It says here, what is the greatest experience you had while on duty for the Canadian military?
Mm.
That could be a tough one, right?
While on duty, well, I'll tell you, I was serving over in Germany, and in 1995, it was the 50th anniversary of victory over Europe.
Okay.
And so I went over to the Netherlands to the Grosbeek National Cemetery, Canadian Cemetery, where there were over 2,000 soldiers buried. And they're all in their 20s, like teens and
Wow.
teens.
Yeah.
Can you imagine 2,000 headstones, over 2,000? And I was
Wow.
with my dear friend Tara, who was also serving with the NATO AWACS. Her grandfather was buried there. He died in
Okay.
1944 during Operation Market Garden. And so I met veterans who fought with these soldiers. They came over from
Wow.
Canada, and I've got I have some photos on my Facebook where there's myself and this group of veterans, World War II veterans, and I'm in my uniform, and they all they wanted was a hug and a kiss.
Wow, really?
I mean, I just had so much love for these men. They were, and the fact they made the trek overseas, and they were in their 70s and 80s at that time, and some of them were wearing their uniforms from that time.
Wow. Like that just gives you goosebumps, doesn't it? Like that's just
Yeah.
chilling about how you talk about that. And it's a whole nother world that civilian life, people like me, myself, we just don't like,
Mhm.
I don't have a clue. You know what
Mhm.
I mean? It's like, so I
Yeah.
really appreciate you sharing. Okay, let's have one more question. I mean, I could go on for days. This is
Mhm.
great. I'm gonna have to have you back and talk more about music, and maybe we'll even get you do a little bit of a cappella. Ooh. Okay, here's the next question. What country were you deployed to that you have had the most valuable experience, and why?
Oh, Germany. Germany
Germany?
for sure, because we would deploy to Italy, Greece, and Turkey on a regular basis to the forward operating bases with the AWACS with an international crew. And I got to see Europe and work with a professional group. And I felt at that time um, performing a really vital service as an international crew. You know, keeping the people on the ground safe by keeping this airspace clear of fighter jets, the
Wow,
different
that
factions
is
that were.
so.
And and I also
This
lived
is I
near the
love that.
Dutch-Belgian border, so I could go to different countries on a weekend and go to different markets and so on. So I got an appreciation for travel, and I also saw, because Canada is an international. We have so many different cultural communities here in Canada, and it was nice to see that Italy and Greece and we went to
Yeah.
Norway, went to Denmark, um, you know, so I went to Spain, went to Seville, Spain for an exercise for 2 weeks at one time. It was extraordinary. I was very fortunate. As a corporal administrative clerk, I had
So
won the
let me ask
lottery for
you a
posting.
question, and I think yeah. So let me ask you a question here, and then I think we're going to kind of wrap up the show a little bit. What do you think? Did you have any interaction with the U.S. military? Did any soldiers on south of the border? And can you give us a little bit of feel of what you think? How was your experience with them, if you had any, with U.S.
Oh
soldiers?
well, with my squadron in Germany, we had a number of Americans. Like we the three squadrons with the AWACS. Squadron one was the American squadron. Squadron two, where I was working, was the Canadian squadron. Squadron three was German, but it was an international squadron. But each squadron, there was more. You there were more Canadians in my squadron than Squadron one. So we had an international crew. The Americans were wonderful, and we would have potlucks. They were very professional. Um, yes,
That's nice to hear. That's
we
nice.
worked with 12 different nationalities, but the Americans were neighbors. So we got along wonderfully.
It's funny. I just want to share a little story, and then we're going to wrap the show. I'm going to come back and give it a couple updates. But I really want to thank you for being on the show today, Joe. Very, very enlightening. I love that you're sharing your stories. Here's a little story that a Canadian veteran shared with me. He says, "Okay, Jay, when we're in the foxholes or whatever, I'm probably obviously using the wrong lingo, but basically, when we have our targets, the Americans, they fret, they hold on, they double check, they make sure the target is just the target, and da da da." He goes, Canadians, when we have a target, we just wipe out the whole place, just boom, knock it all out. Like it was so funny when he said that to me. He goes, Americans, they're so precise. He goes, when Canadians, when they got a job to do, they just go in and they knock it out. It was so funny when he told me that story. So I really thank you for coming on the show today, Jill. And you're doing a wonderful job with Lori on the Today Show, just showcasing employment opportunities, veteran stories, the disability community. So I really thank you. Give a big shout out to Edmonton. When I come back, I'm going to wrap the show, and I'm going to have a couple updates. So again, by the way, our Facebook page has been blowing up the whole show. And we're going to get Fraser Newcomb back on. I guess obviously technology, you know, we can't do anything about it. But Fraser, if you're watching, we got you booked. You're coming back on. So thanks again, Jill. I'm going to come back and watch wrap the show. You're watching Veterans. The Disability Channel, showcasing abilities.
I was born to ramble, not made for standing still. Seems like where I'm bound is always over one more hill. And I'll go the extra mile for you even when the going's hard. God gave me a trucker's heart. Hey, this is Marie Norris. You're watching the Disability Channel, showcasing ability.
Okay, on the show today, we had veteran and musician Jill Younghusband. I love her name. What a name. What a wonderful lady. We're going to have her back on because I want to talk more about music. And if you're a veteran out there and you want to share your story, we would love to have you on. Before I leave, I just want to give a couple updates. Our October 12th fundraiser for our employment programs for veterans is off the hook. It's going to be a sellout. We have a wonderful guitar. We're going to get signed. We're also going to be we're looking at doing a fundraiser in Ottawa. I just got off the phone with the city councilor, who's also a veteran, along with the Ottawa Center's alumni and Doug Smith. So we're going to be doing hopefully a fundraiser out there. Just so much going on with the Invictus Games, employment. Just so I really want to thank people. If you want to enroll in our programs, go to www.thedisabilitychannel.ca, or you can email me personally, jay@thedisabilitychannel.ca. Again, I'm hosting Veterans Corner, but I'm not a veteran. So we need a veteran on this show. So again, I'm Jay Stoyan for the Disability Channel. We'll see you next time.